Have you been wondering why everyone else in the universe seems to sleep just fine while you are that one person left without restful sleep? And have you started to think that perhaps this is a question of moral standings? Have you thought that maybe you're holding on to grudges and injustices and slights against you, and that you need to forgive in order to arrive at a place of peaceful sleep? If this sounds familiar, this episode is for you. We're going to see that there is actually no relationship between moral standing and sleep. We're going to see why it can appear that way. And finally, in a plot twist, we're going to see that there are two people that you might want to forgive to arrive where you want to be, which is a place of peaceful sleep and peace of mind. Hi there, and welcome to this episode of Insomnia Insight, which I, as always, hope will bring tons of value your way. And this is something new here, something we've never really talked about: morality, sleep, insomnia. Questions like the ones we're going to talk about in this episode have surfaced in the past, but what led to this, and which was in a moment that really struck me, occurred just 2 days ago, Monday. And I'll just give you the backstory to set us up for these teachings. I was in a group coaching call in our Insomnia Immunity program, and one of the students asked the question of, do I have to forgive to sleep? And this student had been in a place where they were really, really trying to figure out why they were that one person who just couldn't seem to sleep well, while their friends, neighbors, random people had no trouble whatsoever. And they were starting to wonder if there were kind of this unresolved conflicts within them that had to do with the other people and things that happened in the past, and that they needed to just forgive these people in order to sleep. And they're wondering, has anyone else had this type of question, or how do I meet this? And one thing that's so amazing with the group coaching approach is that there's always other people who've had exact same thoughts and exact same questions. And sure enough, this was another example of that, where several people, I say 4 or 5 people in that very call, said, yeah, I had the same ideas. I used to walk around my neighborhood, and when I saw the lights were on towards the evening, I went, I bet that person's going to sleep. I bet that person's going to sleep well in the other house. I bet those people are going to sleep really well too. Why can't I get that? Have I done something wrong? Is it a question of my karma? Is it like my moral standings isn't high enough? So this discussion made me think, this is something we should talk about. This is not that uncommon to have these thoughts, these questions. So that led to this episode. And the question kind of boils down to is morality and sleep related? And the short answer there is, of course, no. There's no relationship between the two. But we want to go deeper into that. So we're gonna. This is kind of the overview. We're gonna look at the proof that there is no relationship, and then we're gonna talk about why we can start to think that way. Why we can start that. Okay, this is the problem with morality. And I need to forgive to sleep, and then we're gonna look at who to forgive. Right, and that's a little plot twist, because we're going to see that forgiveness is not needed at all. But there are some circumstances where extending some forgiveness can be something helpful. Now, let's start with number one here: proof of no relationship. So the question here is is there a relationship between morality and sleep? And I said before that the answer is no. And the first piece of evidence out of 2 here is that people of dubious moral character are not known to struggle with sleep. Now, of course, I'm not basing this on a large randomized, placebo-controlled study. I don't think there are any. But I would say it this way: if it was true that low moral character led to insomnia, then that would mean that every single person in the universe who is of dubious moral character would have insomnia. And clearly that's not the case. We can probably even from our own personal lives think of that one person who we think was had a questionable character, and they never mentioned anything about sleep problems, right? And we can even think of it as if it was true that low moral character led to insomnia, it would be widely known, because then every single case of insomnia would be traced to that, right? And everybody with poor moral standings would have insomnia, and clearly that's not the case. Somebody brought this up in the call that I just mentioned, and I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. We can clearly see that it's not true that people with low moral character have insomnia, right? Many we can look at literature. I'm thinking about this literature around like the Holocaust, and I used to be really interested in those books and like study this period of this terrible era in human history. But a lot of people worked at like concentration camps and were directly involved with killing people, and then they went home, spent time with their family and slept fine, right? So this is proof A here, and B, on the flip side, many people in our own community who are the most kindest, wonderful people have real significant struggles with insomnia, right? So just from kind of A and B here, we can see that no, there is no relationship between like our moral standings and how well we sleep at night. So if that's the case, then we can ask ourselves, so why then can we get this idea? Why can we get this idea that maybe there's some moral failure that I have to rectify in order to sleep? Where does this idea come from? Well, to understand this, I think firstly, we want to keep in mind that our brain is a survival machine. Like its number one priority, we can say its only priority, is to keep us safe and keep us well. And when it has identified some problem, some threat, some issue, it's going to try to figure out what the source is. What is the source of this problem we're having? Because that then, of course, leads to the solution. So the mind goes into like, can it be this? Can it be that? Can it be that? And so keep this in mind that our mind is kind of actively searching for things. And then we add to that B, that in kind of popular culture, in mainstream culture, sleeping well is often seen as a result of like a clear consciousness. We often hear people say like, how can you sleep at night? Or how can that person sleep at night? It's kind of suggested that if your moral character is low, that should make you have poor sleep, right? So with these two in mind, that our brain is kind of actively searching for reasons that we have trouble sleeping. And in popular culture, like low moral standings is often portrayed as, that should give you trouble sleeping. Then our brain can go like, oh, maybe it's that. Maybe there's something kind of within me that's unresolved, some conflict, some friction, something that somebody's done to me, some slight, something like that I need to forgive in order to sleep well. Or we can also think that it's more like a karma thing, that I need to, generally speaking, be like kinder and nicer in the world, and that I'll be rewarded with peaceful sleep, something like that. But anyway, and now we can see, based on A and B that we just reviewed, why we may think that insomnia has to do with karma, or that we need to like forgive. Now, so what we can see here is that this, insomnia has nothing to do with our moral standings or karma or anything like that. Insomnia is simply based on a misunderstanding. It's simply when our brain starts to think of not sleeping as like a threat, a problem. It sees like wakefulness as a threat, and then it's like, okay, how do we combat this? Oh, we're going to try the supplements, the things to escape it. But of course, we can't escape this perceived intangible threat. And then we have even more trouble sleeping. And then we see like, well, this is really a big threat. Then we try even more to escape it. Then we have more trouble sleeping. Then we try more to escape it, etc. So that's insomnia. It has nothing to do with karma or morality or anything like that. And from that, we can deduce then that, of course, we don't need to forgive this person that we think may have done something to us that we haven't forgiven, right? That's not required at all. Which leads us to this plot twist that there are actually, I think, two people that there's two kind of specific scenarios, or two people that we might want to extend some forgiveness towards with this in mind. So again, forgiveness is not needed for peaceful sleep whatsoever. In fact, sleeping well has no requirements. It's an effortless, passive process. But if forgiving may lead you to peace of mind, then it might be a nice way. And again, this is kind of these two specific people that I think, if it applies to you, you may want to extend some forgiveness towards. And the first example, or the first person, this is rare, something I've only come across a handful of times. The second one, very common. Now, the first one is this one. I've done this for more than 10 years now, helping people with insomnia and coaching and teaching and educating. And I can only think of a handful of times, like literally on kind of one hand, I can think of instances where I thought this person may want to extend some forgiveness towards another person to leave this insomnia struggle. And this is when and if you've been really angry, kind of pointing fingers at the person that you think is responsible for your insomnia. And this could be like the sleep expert who said that if you don't sleep enough, you get some health issue. But I think the more common one, like the one that I've heard a few times, is the person who says like, this psychologist who was supposed to help me said this, and that didn't help at all. Or this doctor prescribed this, or this doctor told me this, or this doctor took away this prescription. And we're essentially thinking that we're pointing fingers towards somebody who in the past did something that we think is causing our insomnia at this moment. And we're like so angry at them. And here's kind of what I suggest here is the following, that on one hand, we can see that what this person said or did probably wasn't helpful. There's probably some truth in what you have experienced, which is that what they said or did, it led to you having more trouble sleeping. I'm sure there's some truth there. But then we can think of like, what was their intent? What was their motivation? Why did they say or do this? And we'll see that the examples in the world where somebody intentionally tried to inflict insomnia upon you are zero. Like that just never happens. So this person who did or something that led to some sleep struggles for you, they either were just like misinformed or uneducated or just unprepared. They were kind of trying to help the best they could, but they didn't have the understanding that could really lead you to where you want to be. And with this in mind, we can see that if we're like going to bed every night and we think like, oh, I'm not going to sleep because what that person did to me a year ago, I'm not going to sleep because of what that person, we can see that that's not what is creating the struggle now. It is, as always, that not sleeping has come to look as a threat for us, and we're afraid of that. That's what's maintaining our insomnia. But kind of like just looking backwards in some event that happened in the past and thinking that's the reason, then we're kind of stuck in a situation where we think a past event is causing my insomnia now, and we can't go back in time to change the past, right? So we're thinking like, I'm always going to have insomnia, and that maintains that fear of not sleeping and fear about the future and fear of uncertainty, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one scenario we can be like, you know what, that thing that happened in the past, it was unfortunate, but that person didn't have any ill intention, and it's not related to my struggle now. Maybe I can extend some grace and forgiveness towards that person. And that can lead to kind of like the struggle fading and things becoming easy for us. So that's one scenario. But I think, again, this one is rare. I've only come across this a handful of times. But there is another person that oftentimes we like point fingers at, and we think like, you're responsible for my insomnia. Why can't you get this right? Like, you're the one to blame. You're not doing things right. And of course, that person that we point fingers at and are really harsh towards is ourselves. That finger is so often pointed at ourselves. We think that we're not doing enough. We're not good enough. We can't figure this out. We're to blame, et cetera, et cetera. And that harshness towards ourselves, not helpful. So very often, it can help to extend some kindness, forgiveness, grace towards ourselves. And when we're kind to ourselves, that really, really leads us to a place of peaceful mind and peaceful sleep. So I wanted to end on that note with something practical. We've understood kind of like that morality and insomnia are unrelated. We've understood why we can start to think that way. But I always want to end these episodes with something kind of that is more tangible. And as so often, we end with a message of self-kindness, which is so helpful. So anyway, I will conclude here. Hope you found this helpful. As always, let me know in the comment section what you thought, and I look forward to seeing you back here real soon. Bye for now. Hi, it's me, Daniel, and I hope you took a ton of value away from the video that you just watched. But if you have been watching for a long time, you're still not at that place of peaceful sleep and peace of mind, maybe it's time for something new. And I say this because every so often, a student in our Insomnia Immunity program tells me, Daniel, I had been tuning in for 2 years and I only decided to join now. And I don't know why I waited so long, because this is exactly what I needed. The thing is that our free content can be all you need. It can lead to where you want to be. And this is, of course, why we share everything freely. But often we need a little bit more than that. Support, community, guidance, discussion, discourse, and you can find this in our Insomnia Immunity program. You can find it in bedtime as well. So if you've been tuning in for a long time and you think it's time for something new, then check out these options on our website, thesleepcoachschool.com. And if you decide this is the time to join, then we can't wait to see you on the other side.